Good afternoon. I call to order the August 12th, 2025 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Marae Bjornberg and I serve as chair of the commission. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices and to speak clearly into the microphone when speaking at the dais or giving testimony. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum?
Commissioner Alexander is absent. Booty. Present. Hare is absent. Corrado.
Present.
Melblom.
Present.
Rodriguez is absent. Thomas.
Present.
Wallace.
Present.
Vice Chair Maston.
Present.
Chair Bjornberg.
Present.
There are 7 members present.
Let the record reflect that we do have quorum and that Commissioners Alexander, Hare, and Rodriguez provided proper notice that they have a conflict this afternoon and their absence is excused. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We will work from the agendas that are available by the clerk, and I will go through the agenda and sort out which items will be withdrawn, which items will be continued to a future meeting, which items will be discussed, and which items will be put on the consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff and without further discussion. Item number 4 is 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 5 is 321 25th Street East, Ward 10. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 6 is 2620 8th Avenue North, Ward 5. This application is for a landmark designation and will be discussed. Item number 7 is 3 East Minnehaha Parkway, Ward 11. This application is for a demolition of historic resource and will be discussed. Item number 8 is 3026 Lake Street West, Ward 7. This application is for a nomination for historic landmark and will be discussed. Item number 9 is Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study. And this item will be discussed. So the proposed agenda is the consent agenda, which will include item number 4, 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13, and item number 5, 321 25th Street East, Ward 10. Is there any opposition from commissioners to the staff recommendations for these items? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to these items? Hearing no opposition to placing these items on consent, we will approve these consent items in one motion at the start of the meeting. The following items will have staff presentation, public comment, and commission discussion and action. Item number 6, 2620 8th Avenue North, Ward 5. Item 7, 3 East Minnehaha Parkway, Ward 11. Item number 8, 3026 Lake Street West, Ward 7. The following item will have staff presentation and commission discussion without a public hearing. Item number 9, Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Maston so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Is there a second?
Melblom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our July 29th meeting. May I have a motion to approve these minutes?
Wallace so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Is there a second?
Booty seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions, including commissioners who were absent?
Melblom abstains.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. The minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for conducting the public hearing. First, we will act on the consent agenda we just set. Once items on the consent agenda are approved, the commission is done with those items and applicants may contact planning staff tomorrow about next steps. After the consent agenda items are approved, we will take each remaining agenda item in order. Planning staff will present its report and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then I will open the public hearing and we will hear from the applicant and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, we will invite public comment. If you wish to speak, we will need you to sign up on the sheet over by the clerk. If you have not done this already, you can do so afterwards. When you come up to testify, you must state your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments specific to the application before us today. If you have materials to hand out, please give them to our committee clerk so that they can be distributed to the commission and entered into the record. After public comments are complete, I will close the hearing and commissioners will deliberate and act on the application before us. I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda items, which are item number 4, 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13, and item number 5, 321 25th Street East, Ward 10. Again, do any commissioners oppose staff recommendations for these items? Are there any members of the public who oppose the staff recommendations for these items? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on the consent agenda items. May I have a motion to approve staff findings and recommendations for these items?
Corrado so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Corrado. Is there a second?
Melblom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Those items are approved as recommended by staff on the agenda, and applicants may contact planning staff about next steps. Our next item is item number 6, 2620 8th Avenue North, Ward 5. This application is for a landmark designation, and the staff report is presented by Aaron Kay.
Good afternoon, Chair Bjornberg and Commissioners. My name is Erin Kay, and I'm a Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation subsection of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED. I'm here to present the designation study for the Nelson House, located at 2620 8th Avenue North. This property was the second childhood home of Prince Rogers Nelson. Here is an aerial view of the property's location. I will first provide some background on the designation study process and then summarize the designation study recommendations. Chapter 599 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances outlines who has the ability to nominate a property for landmark or historic district designation. It can be one of 5 entities: the mayor, a city council member, a member of the Heritage Preservation Commission, or HPC, the planning director, or a person with a legal or equitable interest in the property, meaning the property owner. A good candidate for historic designation is one that has historical, cultural, architectural, archaeological, or engineering significance, and it has to meet at least one of the designation criteria. The 7 criteria are shown on the screen, which I will summarize. Criterion 1 is for properties that are tied to important events and reflect broad historical trends. Criterion 2 is for properties that are associated with important people. Criterion 3 is about city or neighborhood identity. Criterion 4 is about the architecture or engineering. Criterion 5 is about landscape design or development patterns. Criterion 6 is for the work of a master architect or builder, etc. And Criterion 7 is about archaeology, or what we call information potential. This slide shows a timeline of the designation study process for this property. HPC Commissioner Barbara Howard submitted a nomination last September. On October 22nd, the HPC approved the nomination, placed the property under interim protection for 1 year, which means we treat it as if it is a landmark, and called for a designation study to be completed. Since then, staff prepared the designation study. This particular study is based on extensive research and analysis that was previously conducted by Christian Jomler, who is a historian, specifically on Minneapolis music and Prince. Her research included interviews with Prince's family members and also secondary sources. At the beginning of June, staff submitted the study to the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, for a 60-day review. Shortly thereafter, staff submitted the study to the City Planning Commission for a 30-day review. The designation study was discussed at the July 10th, 2025 meeting of the Planning Commission Committee of the Whole. The Planning Commissioners did not reach a consensus on a recommendation. The memo to the commissioners is included in your packet. We also received a letter from SHPO at the end of July in support of the designation. Today is the public hearing for the designation study, and you will make a recommendation. Then it will go to the Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee of the City Council and the full City Council for a final decision. Here is a view of the subject property taken in 2024. Staff recently visited the property to post public notices and saw that the vegetation continues to grow and obscure the house greater than what you see here. Here is another view from 2018, as well as an undated historical photo from Prince's sister, Tyka Nelson's autobiography. Staff's understanding is that the house is in foreclosure and the owner is now the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, known commonly as Freddie Mac. It is a one-story ranch-style house that was built in 1956 by William Reynolds. As you can see in the historical photo, the house was clad in what was called permastone at the time. In 1970, a second garage stall was added at the right or east end of the property. In 1992, the house was reclad in aluminum siding, as we see today. Prince Rogers Nelson was born in 1958 and first lived with his family at 915 Logan Avenue North, which has since been demolished. In 1965, a few months before Prince's 7th birthday, they bought this house at 2620 8th Avenue North. His parents separated a year or two later and divorced in 1968. In 1970, Prince moved in with his father back at the Logan Avenue house. According to Kristen Jomler's research, the period of 1965 to 1970 was when Prince lived at this house, and it was a critical and formative time in his musical development. He learned how to play the piano and developed his songwriting, performing, and singing abilities. His family also attended the Glendale Seventh-day Adventist Church and met Bernadette Anderson and her family, including her son Andre, who later went by Andre Simone and was Prince's best friend and music collaborator. This time period laid the foundation for his future musical success and the creation of the Minneapolis sound. Staff's recommendation is that this property does have significance under Criterion 2 for its association with Prince Rogers Nelson. In staff's opinion, although there have been some changes to the house since Prince lived here, it still retains enough integrity to convey its historical association with Prince. We are recommending its designation for its social history and not its architecture, which can allow for more leniency with integrity and analyzing changes over time. Staff recommends that the period of significance is 1965 to 1970, when Prince lived here. Although Prince lived in many places in his life, his time spent in this house was particularly formative. The future land use of the subject property is urban neighborhood, and the built form is Interior 2. This is a low-density residential area. Any new and remodeled buildings should be small-scale residential. Historic designation is unlikely to impact neighboring properties or future development. This designation would recognize the contributions of a significant individual in the city's history and contribute to the recognition of underrepresented cultural histories and architectural forms within the current listing of local landmarks and historic districts. It represents another landmark that is tied to the city's African American heritage, and we don't have many ranch houses or houses from the 1950s among our currently designated properties. Staff received one comment from the public in support of the nomination, which you would have received at the start of this meeting. As you can see in their comment and my earlier references, there is increasing concern about the vegetation on the property. There are at least 2 active enforcement cases on the property from the last 2 months with directions to cut down or cut back the vegetation. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The nominator is also here today and available for questions.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Okay, thanks. I will now open the public hearing for this item. I believe that the applicant is here and I believe would like to speak. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Chair Bierenberg, and thank you, Commissioners. I'm Barbara Howard, 3333 Holmes Avenue South, and I'm here with Kristen Schaumler, who's the knowledge behind this nomination. I really appreciate all the work that staff has done to put this designation together, and for those of you who were on the commission last fall when I nominated it, thank you for accepting that nomination. As I said then, I grew up in a house of similar vintage, and I swore I would never try to preserve one. But Prince is what brought me to Minneapolis, a town that I absolutely fell in love with. As you know, I've lived here now for most of my adult life. And this house, despite it being much like the house I grew up with, is where a lot of his talent was found and formed. And that's why it means something to me. So I thought I'd introduce Kristen, and then we're here for questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kristen Schaumler, 1386 Idaho Avenue West in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. Thank you all, and thanks to staff for considering this property. Somebody once said to me that Paisley Park is the place that Prince made, but the places in Minneapolis are what made Prince. And I think that that's really important and powerful to recognize the more modest places associated with the man who put, the city on the musical map and really gave it a lot of its appeal. And I think recognizing a property such as this would be really wonderful. I also just wanted to echo my concerns. I've been visiting this house for close to 10 years now, and the condition of the house is very alarming. That, the exterior, it's very overgrown, but I do wonder what's going on in the interior. I don't know if there is any process that could be followed, especially if it is designated, that could maybe offer some protections, or if the city could work with the bank that owns it. I think it would be a real tragedy if it succumbs to deterioration just because it's not currently being lived in. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you both. Okay, the next person that I have on the list, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Al Giesen? If you'd like to.
That's for the next item.
Are you for a different item? Sorry.
for
My bad.
community
Just
law.
kidding. Thank you. Okay, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Are there any comments on the proposed application?
I'll go.
Commissioner Maston.
I think much like when this came to us last year, everything's so well-researched, and I'm in full support, so I'll just go say that now.
Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you, Chair Bierenberg. I agree with Commissioner Maston. I'll also add it's really nice to see a humble building being recognized and seeing social history being recognized, because often, myself as an architect, but I often think that we prioritize buildings over the stories and the people sometimes that lived in them, and the humble beginnings of so many people are as worthwhile as the buildings that the great people built in our community. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Melville. I will also just echo sort of along that same theme, just how nice it is to see something come forward for its sort of like social impact rather than architectural impact. And I appreciate sort of the emphasis on not that we want to see anything happen to the building, but that it is important for more reasons other than it's just architectural characteristics. Other, Commissioner Booty.
I'll echo some of those thoughts. Thank you, Chair Bjornberg, because I was actually absent last October when we first heard this, so it was delightful to read the nomination again and the designation report and kind of learn a different part of history that I had not been exposed to on this commission. So definitely excited to see this type of nomination come through and the opportunity to designate. So I'm fully in support as well.
Any other comments, or would anybody like to make a motion? Commissioner Maston?
I will make a motion that the HPC recommends that the City Council approve the local designation of the Nelson House located at 2620 8th Avenue North.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Is there a second?
Booty seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Booty.
Aye.
Corrado.
Aye.
Melblom.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Wallace.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Okay. Our next item is item number 7, 3 East Minnehaha Parkway, Ward 11. This application is for a demolition of a historic resource, and the staff report is presented by Rob Skalecki.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg, and good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Rob Skalecki, Senior City Planner on the Historic Preservation Team in CPED Planning, and today I'm presenting the demolition of historic resource application for the property located at 3 East Minnehaha Parkway, originally known as the Nicholson House. On April 22nd, 2025, CPED staff determined the property located at 3 East Minnehaha Parkway was a historic resource through a historic review letter. The letter concluded that the subject property appeared eligible for landmark designation under Criterion 1 for social history for its association to the Nicholson family's development of their own property into Nicholson Park, an example of South Minneapolis farmland developed into a residential subdivision. The property also appeared to be eligible under Criterion 4 for architecture as a rare and significant example of a shingle-style farmhouse, and Criterion 6 as the work of master architect Terry Wild Jones. The dwelling was identified as early as November 1990 through a historic property survey formed by Gemini Research. The consultants noted that the property is, quote, one of the first generation of large, late 19th century homes to be built in the rustic Minnehaha Creek area, end quote. It was determined to meet National Register of Historic Places criteria in 2004 by the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, and it was recorded as part of the potential local and National Register eligible Minnehaha Parkway Historic District. The Minnesota Statewide Historic Inventory Portal, known by the acronym MINSHIP, currently records that the property is individually eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. The applicant is proposing to demolish the building on the parcel. The applicant did not state a specific proposal for the property following demolition. Staff received 2 public comments prior to the publication of the staff report, so those were included. And actually, one of those public comments included an attached letter that also had other surrounding property owners included on that. Since that point, staff has received 2 additional public comments, and those should have been included for commissioners to consider for today's meeting. To analyze the demolition of historic resource, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development has analyzed the application to demolish the property located at 3 East Minnehaha Parkway based on the following findings. And first, I want to summarize the significance and evaluating significance. In evaluating significance, CPED found that the property has significance to be considered for landmark status. The property appears to have significance under local criterion 1 for its social history, for its association to the Nicholson family's development of their property into Nicholson Park, an example of a South Minneapolis farmland that was developed into a residential neighborhood. The property appears to be associated with significant events or periods that exemplify broad patterns of social history in the context of expansion of Minneapolis to the south and development of residential areas south of Minnehaha Creek in the late 19th and early 20th century. The property also appears to have significance under criterion 4 as a rare and significant example of a shingle-style farmhouse. The shingle style defines this dwelling by its uninterrupted shingle cladding on the second level, multi-level roof shapes, including a prominent front gable dormer on the rear elevation, steep roof pitches, and extensive use of porch space that's incorporated into the design. The property also appears to have significance under criterion 6 as work that exemplifies the practice of architect Harry Wild Jones. The building was designed by Harry Wild Jones, who is recognized as a master architect in the city of Minneapolis' history, not only just Minneapolis, but also the state of Minnesota. He's considered a master architect by CPED. The building's style and design execution are characteristic of Harry Wild Jones' work, especially at this time. The property is unique in its shingle-style farmhouse expression, and CPED finds that the property appears to have significance under criterion 4. For integrity, in order to be designated, a property must have significance and historic integrity, and staff believes the property retains all 7 aspects of historic integrity. The building appears to have good integrity to its original design. Permit and visual evidence suggests relatively minor alterations have been completed since its construction, and those that have been made are compatible to the original design or the Nicholson family's residence at the property. Considering how the Nicholson family played an active community role in the development of Nicholson Park from 1916 to 1932, the dwelling's change in surrounding to include residential development should be considered part of the site's history that has gained significance. Thus, staff believe the property still retains its integrity of setting, even though a significant portion of the area around the building has been changed since it was constructed. In evaluating the demolition of historic resource application, 2 findings can be considered. The first is that the destruction is necessary to correct an unsafe or dangerous condition at the property. And the second is that there are no reasonable alternatives to the destruction, and in determining whether reasonable alternatives exist, the commission shall consider, but not be limited to, A, the significance of the property, B, the integrity of the property, and C, the economic value or usefulness of the existing structure, including its current use, cost of renovation, and feasible alternative uses. Under the first finding, the destruction is necessary to correct an unsafe or dangerous condition at the property. CPED finds that the demolition is necessary to correct an unsafe or dangerous condition. The applicant has provided extensive information, including a structural report from a professional civil engineer that notes the property is unsafe due to structural concerns. The civil engineer also notes that the building could be repaired, but that the required repairs are not feasible given the price and value of the home and the repairs that are needed. So CPED staff concurs with that the property is in poor condition and that it is currently dangerous given unaddressed structural repairs. Under the second finding, considering its significance, CPED staff has already stated that we believe the property does have significance under criteria 1, 4, and 6. For integrity, staff believes that the property does retain historic integrity. But for economic value or usefulness of the structure, CPED finds that there are no reasonable alternatives to the demolition when considering the economic value or usefulness of the dwelling. The extent of deterioration at the dwelling, paired with the immediate required structural corrections to make the dwelling safe, is not something that can be economically feasible for the property owner. The applicant submitted a structural report by Chris Harnett and Associates, paired with an inspection report by Kate's Home Inspection Services, LLC, and a line item estimate for rehabilitation by Keep the Faith Contracting. These documents together show that the repairs required would not be economically feasible. With the findings, staff is suggesting that the property appears to have significance under local criteria 1, 4, and 6, as stated in Chapter 599-210, and retains enough historic integrity to convey its significance. Therefore, the property is eligible for designation as an individual landmark. The second finding is that the subject property has been determined individually eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. The third is that unsafe and dangerous conditions structurally have proven to exist at the property. And the fourth is that there are no reasonable alternatives to the demolition considering the significance, integrity, and economic value or usefulness of the existing building. So with that, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the demolition of historic resource application by Alex Hecker of AWH Architects on behalf of Patrick F. Bowman for the property located at 3 East Minnehaha Parkway, and recommend that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the demolition of historic resource application. With that, I'm available for any comments or questions. I do understand the applicant is here and would like to speak as well.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you for that presentation. Just one question. I noticed, in the staff report and in your presentation, discussing the economic feasibility as one of the arguments to demolish the property. Can you go into just a little bit on what the specific factors are that you analyze when you get to that point? I know the structural engineering report and that kind of thing, but I'm wondering if you could just give us a little detail on that.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Wallace. That's a great question, and that always happens, whenever we bring forward a demolition of historic resource application. We will always tell applicants and property owners to, show us what you see when you're evaluating could the property be reused. And in this situation, staff really felt that we had enough evidence to consider that demolition should be approved, given, as we mentioned, the structural report, the inspections report, the line item estimate that was prepared for a possible rehabilitation, all that included, paired together with the applicant's materials, allowed staff to be able to recommend approval for demolition here.
Thank you. One quick follow-up, if you're allowed to share this, I'm not totally sure, but what was the total amount for the line item estimate on the potential rehabilitation that the applicant submitted? If you know off the top or a ballpark, just curious.
I believe off the top of my head, I don't know, but I know that the cost of rehabilitation was estimated to exceed the cost of the building currently, so.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Are there other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item, and I understand that the applicant is here and would like to speak. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
I'm just going to talk. Good evening, Chair Bornberg and Commissioners. I'm Alex Hecker. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Alex Hecker with AWH Architects, 2836 Lindale Avenue South, Suite 107, I believe. We're moving, so don't take that with a grain of salt. Thank you for listening to this. I obviously agree with the staff's recommendations. And, I stand before you today. I'm an historic architect. I do a lot of adaptive reuse and historic preservation. I do not like tearing down buildings. And I recognize that this is an historic resource, but the reality is the structure is just far past the preservation where it's physically or financially viable. I read the licensed structural engineer Chris Hartnett's report about the fire damage on the water-saturated framing in critically load-bearing areas, garage that is settled. First of all, that garage was moved and put onto that. side, but wasn't properly put foundations in, that it's falling away from the building and out of plumb. There's failing basement walls, the porch and foundations are sagging and failing. There's active movement going on. There's shoring that's literally holding up the second floor right now. You saw the home inspector's report. There's mold contamination, there's asbestos, lead paint. I mean, all those things, not necessarily, but they make it really unsafe, and there's unsafe fireplaces. His conclusion, not mine, was that it was unfit for habitation and unsafe. As an architect, we find it very hard to say that because there's a lot of liability that goes with that. But I do believe it's an unsafe condition right now. We also explored rehabilitation. The number was 1.25 million, and we did a sort of scope narrative and then walked through it with a contractor and a bunch of subs, looking at repairing the foundations and propping up the porch and redoing the steps and everything. So that was the number that they came up with, and that's before we really dig in. So once you dig in, there's always, in adaptive reuse projects, there's always hidden conditions, and we like to have a 20% contingency on things when we go into things, and that's more than double the property's value right now. And with that too, also, there's sort of I have my grandfather's axe. It's got the handle replaced twice and the head 3 times. That's what would happen with this house if we were to rehabilitate it. We would literally have to take everything out and replace all of it. I mean, sure, there might be a handrail here or there, but all new siding, all new flooring, all new plaster, all new stairs. I mean, the whole thing would be, could maybe look like what it used to look like, but it wouldn't be the actual historic fabric. So, I just think there's no safe way to occupy it. There's no feasible adaptive reuse. And more importantly, there's no preservation path to make it economically viable from a private owner's perspective. I mean, we could get it on the National Register and we could, try to use tax credits, but you can't do that as a non-income bearing property. So they would not have that, potential 40%. So given this facts and, my recommendation, as you know, is to demolish it because there's just really no reasonable and safe course of action other than that. So any questions, or was that enough word salad for you today?
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners, are there questions for the applicant? Commissioner Melblom.
Yeah, Mr. Hecker, I have a question. How long has your client owned the house?
I believe it's since the mid-'80s.
So why was it do you know why it was why it deteriorated to the condition it is now?
Commissioner Melblom, Chair Bjornberg, that's how you're supposed to say it, right? Didn't do that first time. I could speculate. Walking through the house, there's clearly maybe some, I'm not a doctor, but some mental issues going on, and just not, there's no heat, there's no running water, the sewers isn't hooked up, there's a lot of deferred maintenance. Maybe just was too big a tiger by the tail kind of situation when he bought it. And it's just, I don't think any maintenance has gone on at all, period. Well, that's not true. He did say he crawled up on the roof and tried to flash a porch roof to a wall connection, which if you saw in the report, he did it the opposite way you're supposed to flash things. So that's kind of I don't know if that gives you the full picture of what's happened over the last 40 years. But yeah, it hasn't been good.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the note about the specifics on the light item estimate. Just a question for timing. So if the property owner has owned it since the 80s, and I know you're speaking for somebody, so we're all taking it with a grain of salt, but do you have any understanding as to why now he's interested in doing something with the property if he's had it for that long? Just curious about that.
Commissioner, you don't have your name tag on, so I don't know your last name.
Wallace, it's okay.
Commissioner Wallace, Chair Bjornberg. I think the the decision on whether or not it should be demolished shouldn't be based on why now or what's going to happen. But, I mean, there's a real estate agent in the room, so you could make some speculations.
No, you're right. I'm only just asking out of curiosity. It's
Yeah,
just to
we could
get
talk
the
afterwards.
context.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner
He's got his
Corrado?
hand raised, but he's not.
Sorry, I'm trying to find in your application, part of the reasoning was that the zoning restrictions restricted some of the use of the property. Could you speak to that? Sorry, I'm trying to look for the passage.
That wasn't in my report. I don't know if Rob would, I don't remember zoning being part of the issue at all. Maybe a different item?
I'll look for it.
I don't know if staff have any additional comments on that.
I'll take your question, Chair Bjornberg. Forgive me, Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team. I'm also trying to bring it up. I shut my computer down, so it takes a while to wake up. But I think Rob's looking through the staff report if there's a reference to it. But I'm not recalling anything at this point in time either. But Commissioner Corrado may have an answer. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. It's in the June 16, 2025 letter. It's page 27 of our PDF. Under the project description, the second paragraph says, despite its historic significance, the estimated cost of rehabilitation cost exceeds $1.1 million, not including potential unknown conditions or required code upgrades. The feasibility of reuse is further limited by incompatible zoning, form, and layout constraints, leaving no reasonable alternatives other than demolition. So I guess that was my question is, what is the reference to the limitations of the incompatible zoning?
Commissioner Corrado, Chair Bjornberg, I don't know. Was those my words, or?
It is a letter signed by you.
Oh. Well, I mean, I guess I write a lot of letters, so I apologize, letters.
Yeah.
The underlying zoning, I mean, maybe I was referencing, highest and best use, and if you could leverage like a multifamily unit somewhere on the property that could help support, that's probably what my logic was on that. I apologize for not bringing that into my memory right away, but I believe that would be, if it was, something where you could put up, a 50-unit or more and then get the income off of that, then that might support, all right, well, now we can reserve this as maybe like the clubhouse or something like that and spend the extraordinary amount for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was sort of my speculation. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you
Okay,
for
Thank you.
Judging something out of my memory I couldn't recall.
Do commissioners have any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but Al Geisen? Geisen?
Chair and Commissioners, thanks for having me today. And yes, you pronounced it correctly. My name is Al Geeson, and my wife's here too in the audience. We bought our house at 45 East Minnehaha Parkway in the same year that Patrick Bowman bought his house at 3 Minnehaha. And we're the fifth house downhill from Patrick. And I'm here to advocate for the demolition. this is, and maybe I should also say that I've been talking with Patrick along the way. I knew he was wanting to sell the house. His son invited me to come over and meet his father over the years, and so I've been inside, and I don't know how anybody could live in there. If it indeed takes more than 1.1 million to rehabilitate that house, that would be more value than any other house up and down Minnehaha Parkway, in that section of anyway of Minnehaha Parkway. So it would not be economical for someone to rehab that house in that regard in terms of the rest of the neighbors. And it is bordering on Nicollet Avenue, and so the homes on Nicollet Avenue are much, much smaller than that house. So again, they wouldn't be in that same value range. That house has been a problem for the neighborhood for really almost since we moved in. There's abandoned vehicles, there's been a fire, there's drug dealing that's happened out of that house. There's many violations of city code that have been reported and dealt with over the years. And so I have spoken with many of the neighbors up and down, both within the 350 feet area as well as otherwise, and I am not aware of one neighbor who would oppose the demolition of that house. Pat would like to move on. He knows that he can't take care of the house. He knows that it's not the right place for him. He's of some ill health. Just turned 80 last fall, and he needs the money from the house to be able to go forward with his life. And so I know that's not how you make decisions, but from my perspective, it would be nice to be able to see him go. He wanted to be out of that house last summer, so it's already been a year. And I'm afraid that if you don't let it be demolished, that it'll just sit there. Whether Pat continues to live in it, it won't get any better. I'm afraid that he won't find a buyer. It's not economical for somebody to do that. And so I just am afraid that if it doesn't get demolished, that will only be worse and could be, for some neighborhood kids, if Pat moves out or whatever, really a safety issue. So we'd ask that you permit the demolition of 3 Minnehaha Parkway. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak either for or against this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Commissioner Meldblum.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. I have ridden my bike past this house and many times thought, wow, what a blank hole. It's in such bad condition. It's sad. It's a big piece of property. The houses around it are very nice. Certainly the houses down the street and in back of it. Hearing a little bit of the story, it sounds like somebody who just either for several reasons was not able or willing to restore it. It disgusts me that somebody can, through benign neglect, let something that I think would otherwise be a treasure fall in on itself and become a safety issue. It seems like it has to be torn down. That said, it pains me to agree that we should let it be torn down, but I will vote affirmatively for that. Because I fundamentally believe that it's private property, and if somebody wants to let their beautiful asset go to pot, that's their right to do it. I'm sorry for all the people that had to live around it, as the gentleman who just spoke and had to look at that for this many years, had to experience that. But I think we should support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Meldblum. Are there other comments? Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments, Commissioner Melblum. I feel similarly in that this is one of those really difficult decisions that we have because of the significance, everything that the staff outlined as why this house is a treasure. But the economic argument is really tough. I struggle sometimes with the economic argument because everything is so relative that new owners, who knows who they might be, and what they could afford. So that's the balance that I'm working through. I'm kind of struggling with that piece, but yeah, I appreciate the discussion.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. Just to speak to a little bit of Commissioner Wallace's comment about the economics, I'm in agreement that I believe it is a tragedy that this building has fallen into disrepair by neglect. I hate making decisions where we have to potentially lose such a beautiful historic resource, or what could be a beautiful historic resource for our city and our history. But economically, I have to look at it as, the zoning for that building and the zoning around it. Even if you have really wealthy people who are going to come in to potentially purchase this building, it's never going to be worth $1.25 million. Even if they built a $1.25 million house on that land, the area around it doesn't support that price. So unless we're all billionaires and can afford to put more money into a house than what it's ever going to be worth, the economics is kind of the thing that makes me realize that this does need to be demolished. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Are there other comments? Yeah, I will sort of, echo, I feel like what I've heard a lot of, and I will sort of just say, I think that the evidence that we have also sort of received has really supported the argument for demolition really sort of being the necessary step to fix these things. I think a lot of the time we get applications for demolitions that just aren't convincing, but I do feel like the photos and the reports really do sort of support both there being unsafe conditions and it not really being economically feasible to make those repairs. So unfortunate, but I do agree. Other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Melblum.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the Heritage Preservation Commission approve the demolition of the historic resource application.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblum. Is there a second?
Maston seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Any further discussion? Okay, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Booty. Aye. Corrado.
Aye.
Melblum.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Wallace.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Our next item is item number 8, 3026 Lake Street West, Ward 7. This application is for a nomination for a historic landmark. The staff report is presented by Rob Skolecki.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. I'm Rob Skolecki, Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED, and I'll be presenting the nomination for the property located at 3026 Lake Street West, known as Lakeshore Arms. Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commissioner Amy Thomas submitted a historic landmark nomination for the property located at 3026 Lake Street West. The building is known as the Lakeshore Arms Apartments. Information in the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Inventory Portal, known by the acronym MNCHIP, indicates the property has been previously surveyed. The property was inventoried in 2006 by Mead and Hunt as part of the Southwest Inventory, and again in 2011 for the Southwest Transitway Volume 2 evaluation. The initial survey in 2006 did not recommend the property for local landmark designation or National Register of Historic Places eligibility, and MinChip records that the property has been considered not eligible for the purpose of Section 106 since December 2011. The property's significance has not been reevaluated since the 2006 survey. The subject property is a 2-story brick veneered apartment building with a basement half-story. The apartment was built with 17 units and a 16-stall basement garage. The property was designed by architects Bard and Vanderbilt and built by and for Morris Track. The building received permit issuance in October of 1930, and the building permit noted that the project was planned for completion by June 1931. Newspaper records begin to appear announcing the opening of the building for prospective tenants by March 1931. The property was designed using the Spanish eclectic style that was part of the popular period revival home design movement of the 1920s and 1930s. The applicant proposes that the subject property meets 5 of the 7 criteria, criteria 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that the property retains sufficient historic integrity to be considered for landmark nomination. For public comments, staff have received 2 public comments in support of the nomination, which are included in the attachments for the HPC's consideration. Per Section 599-230 of the Heritage Preservation Regulations, the Heritage Preservation Commission shall review all complete nomination applications. If the Heritage Preservation Commission determines that a nominated property appears to meet at least one of the criteria for designation contained in Section 599-210, the Commission may institute interim protection and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study of the property. In evaluating the significance of the property, staff believe that the nominated property at 3026 Lake Street West appears to meet at least one of the 7 criteria for designation contained in Section 599-210, and that is criteria 4, which is the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of an architectural or engineering type or style or method of construction. The subject property embodies distinctive characteristics of the Spanish eclectic or Spanish revival style. The property appears to retain very good historic integrity. The apartment's shaped openings, exterior brick cladding, wrought iron decorations, cast iron entry surround, tile roofing, parapeted gables, minimal eaves, and shield support plaque decorations, spiraled columns, cast stone balconies, and general asymmetry all reflect the Spanish eclectic style. The building's association to the natural environment through patios, French doors, balconettes, and balconies also reflects the Spanish eclectic style. The inclusion of 1930s contemporary amenities like an attached heated basement garage are also characteristic of the style, and the Spanish eclectic style is not yet represented in the body of Minneapolis' individually designated landmarks for a multifamily residential building. The property appears eligible for landmark consideration under criterion 4. Staff also note in the staff report that the property may be eligible for consideration under criteria 6 as the work of Bard and Vanderbilt, but that more research is needed. For integrity, the subject property does appear to retain very good historic integrity. The applicant states that, quote, the Lakeshore Arms Apartments retains a high level of physical integrity in its excellent condition, both structurally and aesthetically. The building's form, features, and finishes correspond directly with the 1930 architectural blueprints and remain legible in all aspects of its original designation, end quote. Design features like the building's original tan brick, wood sash windows, cast stone sills, lintels, and entrance surround, and the building's clay tile parapet accents still exist. Decorative features like wrought iron grills and balconettes, balustrades, and decorative panels stand out as character-defining features of the building. Its integrity of setting has been impacted somewhat by the construction of taller apartment buildings in the area following World War II, but the subject property generally retains integrity of feeling and association as a 1930s apartment building. So overall, the subject property retains sufficient integrity to convey its significance as an example of a Spanish eclectic style multifamily dwelling. And just through staff kind of flipping through some pictures here, you can see the historic integrity reflected in those features that staff mentioned. The Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the nomination by Amy Thomas, Heritage Preservation Commissioner, for the property located at 3026 Lake Street West for designation as a landmark, and recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the nomination of the property at 3026 Lake Street West as a landmark, establishes interim protection, and directs the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study. And with that, I'm available for any questions or comments. I do believe the property ownership is here and will be able to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And would the applicant or property owner like to speak? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Sorry, just to clarify, Chair Bjornberg, the applicant, Commissioner Thomas, is able to speak first, and then the property owner can speak following that. I apologize for not clarifying that.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg and Commission. Amy Thomas, 3858 Garfield Avenue. I brought this nomination forward because I believe the Lakeshore Arms Apartments is a rare and remarkably intact example of high-quality 1930s multifamily housing in Minneapolis. The Spanish eclectic design represents both architectural excellence and the city's period of rapid apartment construction around West Lake Street. In a time when similar buildings, as you can see around it, have been lost or altered beyond recognition, I felt it was important to recognize and protect this particular property, not just as a beautiful piece of architecture, but as a tangible link to the city's growth, housing history, and the community identity of this area. It's one of the few surviving, buildings in that area, and it's very noticeable as you drive around, and I am proud to be presenting this. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from commissioners for the applicant? Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. Mr. Thomas, did you consult with the owner of the building at all through this process?
I did, thank you, Commissioner Melblom and Chair Bjornberg. I did speak with the previous owner, well, at least his broker, and I know the property has recently been sold, and I did speak with the new owner as well. There's some differing of opinions there, but I did speak with them. They are aware.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. And then other members of the public, if you can please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Joseph Ledley. I live at 2885 James Avenue South. Thank you, Chair Bjornberg and Commissioners. I was a tenant at Lakeshore Arms from May 2020 to March 2025. I currently serve as chair of the board of directors at Minneapolis Sailing Center, which I consider a neighbor to Lakeshore Arms as a building that's on Podaymakoska's shores. I moved into the building during a turbulent time in my life, and I found much comfort and solace in its beauty, as every other tenant that I met in that building has. It's a community of mixed incomes, ages, and occupations, seniors, and members of the LGBT community. Every time people came to visit me at the building, they commented on its beauty and uniqueness, and they wondered how it could possibly exist, especially when I took them in the hallway, which is like an old castle. In December of 2024, there was a notice of proposed sale posted in the building, and I was worried about the building's future and what could become of it and the people who lived there. Every other building around it is a new construction, including, I think, Lake Point was a little bit later than was a little bit earlier than a lot of its new neighbors. When I heard of efforts to designate this building as a local landmark, I was immediately supportive, and I wanted to show up in person to encourage the commission to approve the property as a landmark and begin work on a designation study. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry, the owner or other members of the public, thank you. If you can please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission, my name is Steve Hornig, 540 Indian Mound Street, Wayzata, Minnesota. Along with my brother, we purchased the property at 3026 Lake Street West on June 18th, less than 2 months ago. We learned of the potential nomination on June 8th, even though Amy Thomas had sent a letter to the previous owners in late April informing them of her intent to nominate the property for local historic designation within the next few months. We talked to Amy about her nomination in late June, and we were left with the impression that the nomination would be submitted in September or October. Needless to say, we have been scrambling. With that background, I want the Commission to appreciate that this potential nomination has significant economic and social consequences that were not addressed in the nomination or staff report. Nomination would cause the loss of millions of dollars of potential future real estate taxes for the city. It would defeat the 2040 comp plan objectives of dense development close to metro stations, and it would eliminate the chance for many affordable housing apartments in an area nearly devoid of them today. With that said, we specifically oppose the nomination of this property for the following reasons. First, the nomination states that the property meets criteria 1, 3, 4, and 6 of the Minneapolis ordinance that requires a property to meet one of 7 criteria to be eligible for nomination for historic designation. In reviewing the nomination criterion, the staff report concluded, as we just heard, that the property, quote unquote, appears to meet one of the criteria, that being criterion 4, which states, quote, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of an architectural style or method of construction, unquote. In support of meeting this criterion, the staff report states, quote, the subject property embodies distinctive characteristics of the Spanish eclectic or Spanish revival style, unquote. It goes on to say that many of the building's features all reflect the Spanish eclectic style. It concludes by saying, the Spanish eclectic style is not yet represented in Minneapolis's multifamily designations. Ms. Thomas's nomination also classifies the style of the building as Spanish eclectic in numerous instances. Several compelling pieces of evidence are contrary to the style being Spanish eclectic. Number one, the Minneapolis HPC building inventory form, which is attached to the application and staff study, describes the architectural style as Renaissance revival, quote unquote. Number two, I searched Google Images for pictures of Spanish eclectic style, and out of the hundreds of pictures I reviewed, all were finished in white stucco. None were brick. Number three, I submitted the picture of the front of the building, which was put up earlier, and it was attached to the staff report. I submitted that to ChatGPT 5 and asked, quote, "What style of architecture does this building represent?" unquote. It responded, quote, "This building shows strong elements of Tudor revival blended with some French eclectic influences, which was a popular mix for residential architecture in the early 20th century. The telltale feature," goes on and says, "the telltale features demonstrating Tudor revival are the steep gable roofline and stone window surrounds with pointed arch detailing. The ornate front door surround with scrollwork and shield plaque are in line with French eclectic romanticism, with the small wrought iron balconies being a hallmark of French-influenced designs. This obvious case of mistaken identity is so fundamental to the analysis of historical significance in the nomination and staff report that this nomination must not go forward. Second, the staff report discloses the existence of 2 previous surveys that rejected historic designation, as Rob had reported earlier. The first is a survey done in 2006 by Mead and Hunt, a respected historic preservation firm, that explicitly did not recommend the property for local landmark designation or National Register eligibility. The second was an evaluation done in 2011 for the Southwest Transitway that deemed the property, quote, "not eligible for purposes of 106. 106 refers to Federal Historic Review. The text of these reports was not included in the staff report, nor was there any discussion as to the reasons these reports rejected historic designation and why these rejections no longer apply. This commission would be remiss to approve this nomination without full disclosure of the previous analyses and an understanding as to why they no longer apply. Third, the nomination was submitted by Amy Thomas, a sitting HPC commissioner and director of real estate at Rethos. Rethos is a nonprofit organization that directly benefits from Minneapolis local historic designations by providing services for fees and facilitation of historic rehabilitation loans, easement programs, and tax credit programs. Commissioner Thomas's employment with Rethos depends in whole or in part on local designations such as the one before you today. This is a clear and obvious conflict of interest under the city's Code of Ordinances, Title 16, Chapter 425, that requires commissioners to disclose financial or organizational conflicts and recuse themselves from related actions. Her nomination is not an impartial review, but is self-serving and must be rejected by this commission so as not to undermine public trust and procedural fairness. I further demand a formal ethics investigation by the city's Ethical Practices Board or the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings, citing potential breaches of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Section 13D. Along these same lines, we note that no permission was requested of us or obtained to enter our property to take pictures that are attached to the nomination. This raises serious concerns of unauthorized entry, which could constitute trespass under Minnesota law, Section 609.605, and breach of privacy rights under the Data Practices Act, Section 13. We object to the use of this evidence and demand its exclusion along with related findings. This alone warrants rejection of the nomination. Fourth, this nomination is in direct conflict with the city's 2040 comp plan, a legally binding document that guides all zoning, development, and preservation decisions. Neither Ms. Thompson's nomination or Mr. Skolecki's staff report mention the 2040 comp plan in their submissions. As stated at the outset, I noted the significance of the Commission's decision today. This property is zoned in a Transit 30 corridor that permits buildings up to 30 stories tall and as high as 50 stories with built-form premiums. The reason behind this classification is that the property is a short walk to the new Southwest Transit Station and to a commercial hub with shops, restaurants, and a major grocery store. Any future residential development on the property will also require some portion of the apartments to qualify for affordable housing. Preservation of a property in the midst of the 2040 comp plan's density, affordable housing, and racial equity goals warrants discussion in the nomination document, but it is a necessity in the staff report. Yet no mention of the 2040 plan occurred, showing bias and/or incompleteness. Fifth, approval of the nomination today, along with interim protection for an entire year, will have adverse effects on tenants. Ms. Thompson's report states that the building is in excellent condition, which is far from the truth. I'm almost finished. When we spoke with Ms. Thomas in June, we told her that significant deferred maintenance existed. The property was actually owned by 4 children of the original builder back in 1930, and they were in their 80s, and the property fell into disrepair. We mentioned to Amy a badly leaking roof, the bowing of the east exterior wall that posed a danger of falling down, leaks in windows that were entering apartments, and cement ornaments that were crumbling on the front of the building. Yet she failed to mention this in her nomination. The regulatory burden of seeking approval will delay addressing issues that urgently need to be resolved for tenants, in addition to adding costs that could increase rents. In summary, we respectfully request the following: outright denial of the nomination for all the reasons stated above. If not outright denial, a 6-month continuation for independent reevaluation and owner participation. A formal ethics investigation into Commissioner Thomas's non-disclosure of a conflict of interest. Disclosure of prior contrary surveys and studies which were cited above, and elimination of interim protection from any resolution that might be adopted. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you for those comments. I'm looking at Andrea. I don't know that we can take questions.
Chair Bjornberg, are you asking me questions of the property owner?
Correct.
As the property owner, yeah, you may ask questions if you would like.
Do commissioners have questions for the owner? Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments on the proposed application? Commissioner Melblom.
I have a question for Mr. Skolecki, if that's possible. Mr. Skolecki, if we designate this as to proceed on this designation process, does that limit the property owner from demolishing the building? How does that impact or That's the first question.
Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Melblom, for demolition, it would go through the same process, right? If the property owner wanted to demolish it during the year of interim protection, they would submit an application that would come in front of you, much like the ones that did today, to evaluate a demolition.
And then, thank you. My second question is, if there were, if the property owner wanted to make repairs to the building, are there any prohibitions on doing that during the time of interim protection?
So with interim protection, the property is evaluated as if it were designated a landmark for that year's time. So what that means is staff evaluate permit submissions per the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So in that situation, if there are repairs that need to be made, those, we agree those should be made, but they should be made, under the federal standards that we would review permits by.
Given the property owner's questions about whether some document sources should have been part of the report, do you agree or do you disagree, or do you have an opinion? Let me ask that differently. Do you have an opinion on whether those documents would be relevant to our decision making? And let's start with that.
So I know the property owner mentioned the past surveys that determined it not eligible for National Register listing. Those survey forms were included in the attachments, both from the 2006 and 2011 survey form. So those were included for Commissioner's consideration.
And when you reviewed those, did any of those give you cause for concern about rejecting the nomination or suggesting the nomination not be adopted by the commission? Either of those two surveys.
So the surveys did suggest that the property was not eligible for National Register listing. And predominantly, especially with the 2011 survey, the surveyors were looking for National Register eligibility. When we are talking about locally eligible or locally designated properties, of course, it's somewhat adjacent, but we have our different ways that we look at buildings. In staff's opinion, those were just, the windshield surveys is what we consider them. They weren't in depth to a point that allowed us enough information to make a more formal decision with further research brought forward, and also understanding that those decisions were made over a decade ago in this situation. We have more information at this point. Staff believed that there's enough to consider approving the nomination here, given what we know of the property now.
Okay. Had the property owner contacted you at all between the time, I guess, before this to voice his concern with either the process or the findings?
So staff did have a discussion with the property owner, actually pretty recently. So it was following when notices were sent out. So we were able to understand their concerns about the nomination and how they were notified by the previous owner. We were also able to discuss kind of, what the process is, what happens during the Heritage Preservation Commission meeting, what the possible outcomes may be.
And did that conversation cause you to think differently about the nomination or the process?
Which part of the nomination process?
The fact that you had the conversation with the property owner, and the property owner raised specific objections to the nomination of the property.
Yeah, Commissioner Melblom, I think in discussion with the property owner, we definitely heard the same concerns, a lot of the same concerns that were stated today. We understand that these concerns do arise from property owners when their property may be considered for historic designation. And, from that point on, we evaluate nominations as they come in per the ordinance and what the ordinance requires us to review them under.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you. I don't have questions for Mr. Sklecki. If anyone else does, I can
Sorry,
wait.
thank you, Rob.
Thank you. So I am a trained architectural historian. I have a master's degree in historic preservation planning and currently practice preservation work, right? And I've done a lot of Section 106 reviews. So I'm glad that Rob brought up the detail in that 2011 study. I have a few things like this, but just wanted to flag it for the public as an understanding of that kind of study. So a Section 106 study, a Section 106 refers to the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, which governs our federal preservation guidelines. Surveys that are done to comply or to ensure compliance with Section 106 of that act only evaluate properties for potential eligibility in the National Register of Historic Places. So they don't do a deep dive, or are not meant to do a deep dive in evaluating significance for local designation, which even though those two have similarities and are related, they're two different processes on purpose for this kind of thing. The other piece of that, so those two studies were included. They're very important as background information. I fully agree with that. But something, again, kind of as a public education piece, is that the State Historic Preservation Office for Minnesota has a basically rule that after those kinds of studies, evaluations have passed 10 years of age, they are, you have to reevaluate essentially. So because of new information that is available, potentially, depending on the project, that kind of thing. So those two studies, while they're important, and any kind of previous survey is important to this discussion, it's important to note too that that rule is in place to ensure current updated review of properties, across the state of Minnesota. So that's critical. One other piece that I wanted to just touch on was about the style. So architectural style, especially in this era, can be somewhat convoluted. I personally agree with the Spanish eclectic citing as the style, but styles of this era often have features that are more prominent in other styles. Architectural style as applied to specific buildings, it's not like the architect would take a book out and say, all right, which characteristics do I want? That doesn't happen. That's a social aspect of that piece. So properties, particularly multifamily properties of the 1930s of this era, would likely most often have features that may be more prominent in other styles. So that's something that ChatGPT probably hasn't grown up enough to know the nuance of, but something just that to keep in mind that that's why there are people behind these kinds of evaluations to apply that kind of nuanced understanding of these changes over time. One other thing I wanted to note, and I think this is accurate, but just in terms of the photos that were included, it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the photos were obtained in the winter, so that would have been a different property owner at the time who would have given permission to access those. Generally, if the property owner isn't involved, we would take photos from the public right-of-way for different kinds of surveys, but the property owner who owned the property at the time allowed those photos to be taken, so I think that's why they were included. I'll stop for the moment, but I wanted to just share some of those thoughts because they're kind of niche nuances of the practice of preservation in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. I appreciate all of the comments, and I sort of want to make sure to bring us back to what we are looking at and, voting on tonight, right? It is whether or not this nomination moves forward into a designation study. So this is not about whether or not this property is going to be designated. This is about whether or not we believe this property within this application, if there's enough information for it to go forward, to have a full designation study done, which again, would be building on more information, pulling out all of these things. So just want to sort of bring us back around to that. Commissioner Maston.
Right. Commissioner Wallace, thank you for that background information. And I think, Chair Bjornberg, you're absolutely correct. I think all the questions and maybe some of the contentious nature of this particular item that has come up is exactly why this motion would be a good one to approve, because there are further things that can be researched and some of these questions can be fleshed out. And that's what this process of establishing interim protection and directing a study to happen would do.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was a point that I missed in my gobbledygook here. Sorry about that. Yeah, that the motion to approve a designation study allows these questions to breathe and to really do that deeper analysis and that independent kind of work that the applicant has requested in his list. So I think in terms of kind of finding that balance, it does seem like the right move forward to see what the next steps are.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. And I think that, sort of to Commissioner Melblom's question to Mr. Skolecki, their maintenance work can continue, right? It is a little bit of a different process, but, historic buildings can have work done on them. It just has to be, meeting specific standards. And I know staff are really great at giving feedback on what that looks like. Other comments from commissioners on this item? Commissioner Corrado.
Given that we saw another item where deferred maintenance really had a building that was deteriorated, it's nice to see a building that's been taken care of. Obviously, it's not a high rent building, but within that neighborhood, I mean, I looked at a lot of apartments trying to find a place to live. That neighborhood was not affordable for me. But it's nice to see these buildings that have a connection to the past that allows us to understand the city grew outward toward the lakes. Obviously, Lakes Street is a very major corridor. There's our past with our streetcars, et cetera. And the style of the building, which is sort of this quirky, eclectic thing, I think is nice. Not necessarily unique, but it is unique to that neighborhood. And it's nice to be able to at least recognize it in some way. I'd hate to see it go, but that's obviously not necessarily my choice. But yeah, I just wanted to say that building has been loved and taken care of. And I certainly hope that at least in the short term, it gets taken care of further. And then, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Corrado. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Booty.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. I think that I have very similar opinions to everyone who has spoken here. I appreciate Commissioner Wallace's explanations too of kind of the context for everything that we're dealing with this particular agenda item. I sense that there's a lot of similar opinions here also, so I'd like to make the recommended motion that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the nomination of the property at 3026 Lake Street West as a landmark, establishes interim protection, and directs the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Is there a second?
Wallace seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Any discussion? Would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Booty.
Aye.
Corrado.
Aye.
Melblom.
Aye.
Thomas.
Abstain.
Wallace.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. That motion passes. And that concludes our public hearing items. Our last agenda item of the night is item number 9. Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study. And the staff memo is presented by Aaron Kay.
Good evening, Chair Bjornberg and Commissioners. My name is Erin Kay, and I'm a Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation subsection of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED. I am thrilled to present to you the Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study. I know we've brought quick updates to you about this project over the past year, and today we'll go a little bit more in depth. So this slide gives you a bit of an overview about the overall project. We've led this project with an intention to do preservation a little bit differently from before and try new tactics. You've heard from us before, back in 2022, about the first phase of this project, which was focused on community engagement. Judge Lejeune Lang led that work and brought in various community stakeholders to share their stories. That phase laid the groundwork for us to write the context study, which kicked off in early 2024. This second phase was funded by a $67,500 grant from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, better known as the Legacy Grant Program, and a $5,250 cash match from CPED. We hired 106 Group to write the study. As many of you may know, Commissioner Wallace is a part of that project team. They also selected two technical advisors, Judge Lejeune Lang and Denise Pike, to provide oversight. And for folks who may not be familiar, a context study describes people, places, and events related to a common theme. We use context studies to identify historically significant places. This particular context study, as I think you all know, focuses on African American heritage in Minneapolis from around 1800 to the present day within 7 themes. As part of the project, 106 Group also did a reconnaissance architectural history survey of 25 sites. And so your attachments today include both the context study document and the survey report. Oftentimes in these types of projects, we will hire a consultant, they do the work, and then the job is done, which is definitely a valid approach. But knowing that this phase was a really big lift for us, we approached it differently and wanted to create and nurture a highly collaborative relationship with our consultant team. So we had regular check-ins, we bounced ideas off of each other, and also tried out new ways of approaching community engagement. One of those methods was to form the African American Heritage Work Group, or AAHWG. We really wanted to make sure we included community voices in the telling of their history. So we went through a formal process to establish the work group through City Council and the Mayor in March 2024, take applications and interview candidates, and then the City Council and the Mayor appointed members in July 2024. We feel very blessed by the amazing group of folks who were appointed to this group and chose to participate. It was an intergenerational group with ties to different parts of Minneapolis and a variety of lived and professional experiences. We met 7 times over the last year, and the group provided truly invaluable input to shape this project. And here you can see photos from our first meeting. This was really an exercise in trust building and being intentional in how to empower the group to make decisions where they could. We did our best to keep informational updates to a minimum and allow for group discussion as much as possible. And it was also really important for us to follow up and demonstrate how we use their feedback and make adjustments and or change directions with the plan. I feel that the impact of the African American Heritage Work Group really cannot be understated. And hopefully we'll keep talking about this for months to come and years to come. One of their first tasks was to give input on the research design, which informed the direction of the context study and the research that our consultants undertook. It was also really critical to invite the members to review and comment on the draft of the context study, correcting information and suggesting additional content. We discussed the draft with the work group in March and received an overwhelmingly positive response from the group, which was really validating. Early on, the group also asked to be able to talk about what other ways we could recognize African American heritage, beyond historic designation, which we added to the task list, and we're happy to hold that conversation in February. That wasn't something that was even on our radar, but a really important conversation to be had. The group also selected 40 sites for consideration in the architectural history survey, of which 25 were studied. And here we have a photo of most of the group members with Councilmember Andrea Jenkins at the final work group meeting. We also did additional community outreach for this phase using a variety of methods. We started a Gov delivery newsletter titled Honoring Black Heritage. Not sure if any of you are subscribers. And we sent periodic updates, which we'll continue to use as the project moves forward. You can see a screenshot in the top right of this slide. Of note, we started with about 60 subscribers over a year ago and now have over 600, so it has grown significantly. We also posted an online comment form on our website, which got a little bit of traffic, not a ton, but it gave people an opportunity to suggest places, people, and other topics that they felt were important to include in the study. We also tabled at different community events, including Juneteenth, Black Business Week, and the Community Connections Conference. And so at those events, we created small posters to invite folks to share ideas about what they thought were important to African American heritage in Minneapolis. And so you can see two examples on the bottom left with handwritten notes and Post-it notes with input. We also created a Black History Month trivia game based on information from the context study, which is shown at bottom right. And overall responses were really positive to this engagement, and folks were excited to learn about the project. It was kind of hard to understand what is a context study without seeing it, but they seemed excited to learn more. Because we won't have time to go through the entire context study together, I have the outline here to give you a teaser, and then also some historical images that are tied to the different themes. We really want to make sure folks know that there are a lot of great stories in this document, and also that it is not comprehensive. We hope many more stories can be uplifted beyond this document in the future. So the introduction describes the project and gives information to help people understand what this is. The second section goes into detail about the 7 themes. So those 7 themes are arrival, residential life and neighborhoods, religion and houses of worship, employment and professional growth, community, social organizations, recreation and education, arts, design, music and culture, and finally segregation, discrimination, civil rights, and reclamation. So a lot of topics covered in this document. As you might imagine, the topics also overlap so that there are moments when people, places, and events might appear in multiple sections. The third section provides information on different types of designation, funding opportunities, and preservation partners, so it can be a resource to folks who want to take next steps. It also summarizes specific recommendations from the work group and priorities for future work, which really include a wide variety of ways to recognize this history. While we as the city can do some of the work, we hope folks can join forces to continue this work and prioritize community member input and knowledge in those next steps. And then the last section is a robust bibliography, so hopefully that is a helpful research tool for the future. For the architectural history survey, I have a map here of the 25 places that were surveyed, just to give you a sense of the geographic spread. Although it's not typical, we asked property owners for their permission to include their properties in the survey. And we feel that this was a really important step to be able to explain what we were doing and connect with folks in advance of taking action. And that is why we needed the work group to actually come up with a bigger list. So we ended up with 40 sites in case we had folks that said no to the survey. And generally, we got a really positive reaction from those who chose to participate. No one said no. There were just a few property owners that we didn't hear back from, which is totally fine. Of these 25 sites, 17 are still standing or extant and are recommended potentially eligible for local landmark designation and or national register listing. 8 are no longer standing or have been altered significantly, so they are recommended not eligible. And while we will recognize the 17 sites as potential historic resources within the city of Minneapolis, in the way we look at potential local landmark designation, we also want to make sure, we are not going to actively pursue historic designation on these sites unless property owners want to do that. I think, again, that's part of bringing people along with us in these decisions. In terms of our next steps, we are now ready to share the reports with the public. So our website has been updated with the context study and the survey report. We are also putting the finishing touches on short summaries for each of the 7 themes that will be available as handouts or will also be able to be downloaded from our website. They are written in plain language and also have photos, so we hope that this will invite people into the content, even if they don't want to read the whole context study, which is, I believe, 223 pages. And then we can also bring those handouts to future public events like conference presentations. I will be presenting along with some work group members at the Preserve Minnesota Conference and then the APA Minnesota Conference in September. So we're excited to have those available at both of those. And then we've also been sharing electronic and hard copies of the context study with several area repositories so that the public can access it. Our third phase of this project is already underway, which is funded by a National Park Service Underrepresented Communities grant, and we are in the process of selecting consultants. In that project, I know we've mentioned it before, but just to be complete in our presentation here, we'll be preparing a multiple property documentation form, or MPDF, on African American resources in Minneapolis, and this will outline registration requirements for places to be listed in the National Register. So the idea is having this form to make it easier for people to pursue that if that's something that they want to do. We are also nominating 3 sites to the National Register that are pictured here, including the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder Building, the Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, and the Harry Davis Senior House. National Register nomination does require property owner permission, and all 3 are thrilled to be taking this next step and recognize their site's history. So we'll be updating you on this progress over the coming year. In closing, there's a lot of people we would like to thank because this project would not have been possible without all of the folks listed here and likely many others. So first and foremost, we would like to thank the African American Heritage Work Group, which included Daniel Bergen, James Curry, Kendra Elner, Tiara Farad, the late Michelle Gibson, who sadly passed away in April, Minister Dr. Ora Hoax, Denise Jameson, Brian Kelly, Michelle Lincoln, Greg McMore, Julia Maturi, Beverly Propes, Davu Seru, Tene Wells, and Keegan Zavi. We also want to thank community historians who laid a strong foundation for this project. The context study is definitely not the first document about Black history in Minneapolis. It builds on a lot of work that many folks have been doing for many years. We'd like to thank the 106 group team, including Steve Gallo, Treasurer Tinsley, Max Chavez, Lindsay Wallace, and Laura Sadowski, and their technical advisors, Judge LeJune Lang and Denise Pike. CPAD staff, including but not limited to Andrea and Rob, who helped with administrative tasks, brainstorming, supporting the African American Heritage Work Group, connecting with property owners for the survey, and communications to amplify the work. The property owners of the surveyed properties for graciously allowing us to include them in the project, the Minnesota Historical Society, who administered the grant program, the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, and you all on the HBC, many of whom reviewed the context study and provided comments, the Office of the City Clerk, who helped us get the work group started and keep it running, a variety of preservation partners who have supported this work, and also members of the public who have shared ideas and resources over the years. So with that, this concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to stay for questions and also take any comments or feedback from you all.
Thank you for that report. Just to confirm, you're not looking for any specific motion or anything here, just a time to give feedback on this, correct?
Chair Bjornberg, that's correct. There is no action that you need to take on this item.
Thank you for that clarification. I do really just...
Sorry, I think I maybe have misspoken in that you need to receive and file the documents.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that question.
There's no vote, though, that needs to be taken.
If I can chime in, Chair, the default, if something comes before the body, it is without a vote, it is inherently received and filed, so no special vote is necessary.
Perfect.
If you want to clarify, that's up to you, but okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do just sort of want to start with a comment that, like, I hope that you all within CPAD can, like, feel a huge amount of accomplishment on continuing to move this forward. And really sticking to wanting to sort of do things in a different way, which I imagine has been very, very hard and challenging at many points throughout the process. So like kudos to you guys on sticking with it and like making that happen. And it is always very hard to try to do things differently, but I think that like this document and everybody who's been involved is really just like testament to how important that was. And I'm also very happy to hear that, you know, you're already planning to bring results or talk about this at conferences, because I think that this is something that preservation professionals like everywhere should be hearing more about, of like, hey, we all talk about like, let's do things differently. And like, now here's an example of really trying to do things differently. I swear I had another comment, but I might take a minute. Other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. Ms. Kay, so when will we get to see the nominations for those 3 properties brought before us?
Commissioner Melblom, Chair Bjornberg, we are hopeful that those National Register nominations will come before you sometime in 2026.
Great, thank you. I look forward to reviewing them. It's really nice to see the product of the work done by everybody involved with this, to tell stories that are, some of them are mildly known to all of us, but it'll be nice to memorialize them in much more robust fashion and have them entered into the public record. So thank you all for doing this.
Commissioner Maston.
Yes, I just want to thank you all for your work as well. And I thought the document was very readable. You know, I kept thinking, you're supposed to be reading this critically for comments, and I was just reading it, but no comments other than thank you. I thought it was great.
Commissioner Booty.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. I just appreciate even this slide that you're showing us right now, of the immense amount of work that has gone into this study. I just want to congratulate and say that comment too. It's just that there's so many people that were involved to collate all of this history into a palatable and easy to comprehend document. So I'm really looking forward to what comes of it.
I will also echo the other thing that I had forgotten to say was I really appreciate, you know, in the memo and in your presentation, you mentioned, you know, trying to create like overviews of each of the sections written in plain language. And I know that the plain language has been a big push and an initiative from your team for a while. And I really appreciate it. And I think that it again is another thing that sort of helps preservation work be understood and valued by more people. So I was like very, very excited that it's like, okay, yes, this is a large document that lots of us are gonna like spend a lot of time loving and recommending, but for people who maybe want a shorter version, that something like that will be available. So I do really appreciate that as well. Commissioner Corrado.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the readability and accessibility. I already have friends who've read it. They're very excited and they're continuing to share it. So I'm hoping that it has now taken its own life moving forward. And I also appreciate on the surveyed properties that there are a number of properties that are not yet eligible because of its age, but have already been recognized for its importance, and so get to receive a position in line for future nominations.
Other comments from commissioners? Andrea Burke.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg. I know usually I'm not part of the discussion, but I do just want to thank very much Erin for all of her dedication to this project. It has been an enormous lift with a lot of meetings and a lot of work and a lot of documents and a lot of coordination, and also to Rob for providing the support to this project, to going to all of the Heritage Work Group meetings, taking notes, providing a bouncing springboard for ideas on this, and I just very much thank you for carrying this project, which started as an idea in a conference room that I think was actually over there when this building looked a little different. A number of years ago, I was like maybe 6 years ago now. So just very excited and proud to see this come through, and just appreciate staff's work on this so much. So thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments from commissioners? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
That concludes our discussion items. Do staff have any announcements?
Chair Bjornberg, yeah, I just have two very quick things to mention, and we can be on our way. But just a quick reminder for the Preserve Minnesota Conference, which is September 10th through the 12th. I know some of you have reached out and were interested. We did receive the scholarships as a pass-through from the Certified Local Government Grant Program, so that is carrying forward. So thanks to those to reach out. Others, if you're still interested, for whatever reason, I very much want to highlight that conference. It really is a good place to get together with others in our field and meet and greet and listen to current issues. And then also just one more last plug for the National Alliance of Preservation Commission short courses just next week. I know several of you have reached out for the discount code, so I appreciate that. It's still available. If you, for whatever reason, have a last change of mind, no worries. But I just wanted to give a last minute mention of that, and that concludes my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any announcements? Oh, Commissioner Melblom.
I have a question for Andrea Burke. Could you tell us the status of the ordinance change, where that sits and when that may come to me? I've had several people ask me about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom and Chair Bjornberg. Yes, actually, we do have some updates, although I have to chat with Paul afterwards. Yeah, we did reach an agreement kind of solution with just where we had some differences with the clerks on some of the text going forward. So that is proceeding at this point. Have to check off one more thing with the clerks to have them take one more look at it, but our hope is to bring that to HPC in mid-September. So very soon is the hope. So that's what we're shooting for right now. So, but we just got to make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, figuratively and literally. Thank you.
Any other questions or commissioner announcements? Okay. With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting, and there being no other business to come before this meeting, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the HPC is September 2nd. Thank you.